another tutorial in Telegram bot series in Ubuntu. So in this video, we will be building the base of our Telegram bot. So here we have in the Telegram API documentation, we have the various objects that are sent in the JSON of the request that is sent to the webhook. So we're going to be interested in the chat object right here, because we want to get the chat ID, because this chat ID that we're going to use to send the messages back to the user or reply back to the user with the appropriate response. So we are also interested in the message object right here, which has the chat object along with the type, we can say, of the message. So if the message is a text message, then we're going to have a key that is text, and the value of that key is going to be the text, apparently. And we can also have other types like audio. We can have an audio file, we can have a document, we can have a photo, etc. So we're going to create a base that has some supported types, right? And we're going to encapsulate this message in a class. So we want to create a class that is going to be responsible for reading the message, or we can say parsing the message, and then it's going to have some methods to get the appropriate response or action that should be done by the server, right? So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to switch back to VS Code, and here we have the server code that we created in the last tutorials. So what we're going to want to do now is actually create a file that's going to hold a class that represents the message, right? So I'm going to right click here and add a new file. I'm going to call it message.py, and in this file I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to call my class message, and we're going to have some supported types. Of course, we're not going to cover all the types for the messages. So I'm going to create an array right here, or a list supported underscore types, which is going to be text, maybe audio, maybe document, and photo. So these are the types obtained from this documentation right here. So we have text, we have audio, we have document, and we have photo. Alright, so what we're gonna do now is actually define our constructor that is going to parse the message and read the chat ID, the type of the message, and the value of the message. So what I'm gonna want to type here is def underscore init underscore is gonna take self as a parameter, and then the message, right? And as I told you, this message, it has the from, which has the ID of the chat. So self.chat underscore ID is equal to message of from of ID. And now we want to determine the type of the message. So the message can be a text, and if it's a text, then we're going to find text key in the message dictionary or JSON object, and we're going to find audio in the message if it's an audio file. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to loop over our supported types and check if one of them matches the type of the message. So what we're gonna do is make a for loop right here for message underscore type self.supported types. Then we're going to check if this type exists in the message object. So if message.get message underscore type, then self.type is equal to message underscore type. So this is our type, and self.value is apparently going to be the value of this key in the message dictionary. So it's going to be equal to message of message underscore type. And then we just want to break the loop, else self.type is going to be equal to false, and self.value is going to be equal to false as well. Alright, so now this constructor is going to read the chat ID along with the type of the message and the value of the message, right? So what we're gonna do next is actually define our getResponse method, which is going to return a response based on the type, based on the value of our message. So let's define the function. So def get underscore response of self, and it's going to first check that the type is set, right? So if self.type, and we want to also create a method to get the response for each type. Okay, so for example, for the text type, we want to create a method that looks like this: def underscore text underscore get underscore response. I'm just going to take self, and then it's going to return the response. Okay, once we implement this, it's going to return the response. So we want to make this dynamic. We don't want to type if self.type equal text, then call this method. We want to make a dynamic call to the method. So what we're gonna do is check if the method exists in our class, then we're gonna call this method, right? So what we're gonna type here is has at, and then we give it our self object, and then the name of the method. So the name of the method is going to be %s, because we're going to fill this using string formatting. It should begin with underscore because we have just used this convention right here. So underscore %s underscore get underscore response. So this is the name of our method. So if our method exists, then what we're gonna want to do is actually give it first the self.type to replace this %s right here. And if we have a valid type and we have a response method, then what we're gonna want to do is actually call this method. So result will be equal to get at, and then we're gonna just copy the same exact thing right here. So this returns the function, and we want to call it, then we want to use these empty parentheses right here. Alright, so now we have called this text get response in case the type is text. What if the type is not text? What if the type is not supported? Then we have to add an else right here. So if the type is not supported, we are going to create a method that will return the not implemented response. So result is equal to self.underscore not underscore implemented underscore response, right? And we want to just define this method right here, self, which is going to return the response for the not implemented response, right? Okay, so right now we want to actually think of the response. What is the format of the response? So if the response is a message that should be sent to the user, then it's going to call the method name in the Telegram API that is called send message, right? And this send message takes parameter that is the chat ID and the text that is going to be sent to the user. So apparently other methods take other parameters, right? So we're going to split our response into two parts. So the first part is going to be the method name, and the second part is going to be the parameters that are going to be sent to this message, right? So for instance, for the not implemented response, we actually want to send a text to the user, right? So I'm going to call this here response, which is going to be equal to, actually a dictionary, which has the text, right? And right here, the value of the text that is going to be sent to the user, which is actually, this type is not implemented. For example, right? Feel free to change this as you want. Okay, so this is the response, right? And we are going to have another part, which is the method name. So I'm going to define here a variable that's called method underscore name, which is going to be, in this case, send message, right? And how did I know that it's going to be send message? Well, basically, I want to send a text message to the user, and according to the API of Telegram, if I want to send a message, then I'm going to have to use the send message method, right? So what we're going to do now is actually return this tuple, the method underscore name, and the response, right? Okay, what about the text get response, right? So for now, we're going to make an echo server, which means that we're going to send whatever text the user sent to us, right? So our response is going to be like text, because it's apparently a text, and the value of the text is going to be self.value to send the value that the user initially sent to the server. And like the not implemented response, we're going to have here a method underscore name, which is going to be equal to send message, because we want to send a text message, right? And we want to return method underscore name and the response. Okay, so now that we've seen the text get response and the not implemented response, we have come into a conclusion that our result should always be a tuple, right? And it's a tuple of length 2. The first element is the method name, and the second one is the dictionary of response, right? So I'm just gonna make a check right here to make sure that the response or the result right here in get response matches this criteria, right? So we're gonna type here assert is instance of result. We want to check the result to be tuple. So is instance, we're going to give it, the first parameter is going to be the result, and the second one is going to be the type, which is tuple, right? And len of result should be exactly 2, and result of 1, which is the second element in the result, it should be of instance dictionary. So is instance of result of 1, and it should be dict or dictionary, right? Okay, so after this, after passing the assert statement, then we're 100% sure that our response is valid, right? So what we're gonna want to do is append the chat ID to the parameters or to the response dictionary that is going to be eventually sent back to the user. So what we're going to want to do is type here result of 1 dot update, and then we're going to give it a dictionary of the chat underscore ID, which is going to be self dot chat underscore ID, right? And then what we're going to do is simply return the result, right? Okay, so now we have created our base class of a message, right, that has some supported types for the messages, and it should implement those types, right? And each type is implemented using a separate method, and then returns a method name and a response, which is a dictionary that represents whatever the response is. If it's a text, if it's a whatever. But for now, we're implementing only the text responses, right? So let's go back to our server.py, and what we're gonna do now is actually import the request from Flask, and we want to import requests library. We want to import also the time, and from message we want to import the message class that we have just developed, right? Okay, so now we need to add some extra global variables right here. We want to add our Telegram token. So Telegram underscore token, which is gonna be the token generated by the bot father. So let's go back right here, and let's copy this token from here, paste it in here. Okay, so this is the Telegram token, and we're gonna have the API underscore URL, which is gonna be equal to formatted string of https://api.telegram.org/bot, and then the Telegram token, Telegram underscore token, then plus our method name. So I'm gonna put it into curly braces right here because we're going to use string formatting to fill in the method name. So this is gonna be method underscore name, and we're gonna fill this method name whenever we send the response back to the Telegram server, right? Or the Telegram API, I mean. So what we're gonna do now is actually define a method that is going to send our response, right? So right here, I'm gonna define a new method that is called send underscore response, and this send response is gonna take the method underscore name, and it's gonna take also the parameters that's gonna send, right? So params right here, and what this is gonna do is actually make a post request to the API of the Telegram, calling the specified method name with the given parameters, right? So R, which is going to represent our request object, is going to be equal to requests.post, and then we're going to give it our URL, which is going to be equal to API underscore URL.format, and we want to fill in the method underscore name with method underscore name, and the post method takes an extra parameter, which is the parameters, right? So params is equal to params. Okay, so if our request is successful, which means that the r.status underscore code is gonna be equal to 200, right? So we just want to return this from here. So if we return r.status code is equal to 200, this means that send response is gonna return a boolean value indicating whether it successfully sent the response or not. What we need to do now is actually create an object from our message class, right? Give it the message to be parsed, then get the response and call this send response method. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just remove this from here, and in our entry point or the main method right here, we're gonna create our message object. So message is equal to message, and then we're gonna give it the message JSON, which is gonna be in request.json of message. Alright, so this is gonna be our message that is sent from the Telegram API, right? and then we're gonna process this message and send back the response, right? So what we're gonna do now is actually invoke the getResponse method, which returns the method name along with the parameters. So method underscore name comma params is equal to message.getResponse, right? And now that we have the method name and the params, then what we're gonna want to do is basically just send the response, right? So we're just gonna call send response and give it the method underscore name and the parameters, right? What if the send response method fails to send the message to the API of Telegram, right? Then we're gonna have a return value of false. So what we're gonna do is actually retry again after some time to send the message. So what I'm gonna do now is put a while not send response method call. So if the return of the method is false, then it's gonna execute this loop, right? So what I'm gonna do is actually sleep for some time, then retry again. So I'm gonna call the sleep method in time library, so time.sleep, and then we're gonna give it a value in seconds. So I'm gonna sleep for like 5 seconds and then retry to send it again. And eventually we have to reply back to this request by any response. So I'm just gonna return okay, and we should be good to go, right? Okay, so just a quick recap of what we've been doing right here is we created a class that is called message, right? And this message class encapsulates the Telegram message, right? So what it does, it has a constructor method that takes the message JSON object or the message dictionary, and it parses this dictionary. It extracts the chat ID and extracts the type of the message along with the value of the message, right? And then we have a method that is called getResponse right here, which returns a response which is composed of two parts, or I mean it's a tuple of two items. The first one is the method name that is gonna be called from the API of Telegram, and the second item is actually the parameters dictionary that is gonna be sent along with the post request sent to the Telegram API to respond back to the user's request, right? So we are calling dynamically the methods to get the response for each supported type. And we created a convention that is starting with an underscore, then the name of the name of the type, right? So this one is text. We can have audio, we can have document, we can have photo, then underscore get underscore response, right? And we're calling dynamically this method to get the response for each type of messages the user sent, right? And in this entry point controller right here in this main method, we actually create an object of the message class that we have just created. We give it the message dictionary, and then we call getResponse method to invoke the dynamic getResponse method according to the type of the message or the not implemented response if the type is not implemented in our Telegram bot. And then we end up with the method name that we should call in the Telegram API and the parameters that are going to be sent along with this post request, right? Then we call the send response method, which initiates this post request. And if it successfully makes the request, then we're good to go. If not, then we're going to wait for 5 seconds and keep trying again and again, right? Okay, so now we're good to go. I just forgot to put a slash right here before the method name, and we should be good to go. So let's run our server, Python server.py, let's go back to our Telegram UI right here and search for BasselTech bot. This is my bot right here. So we're gonna start. Here we go. We'll search hey, and the bot replies back with hey, hello, hello. Let's send a photo, for example. I'm sorry, this type is not implemented. Let's try to send a sticker. I'm sorry, this type is not implemented. Okay, so that's it guys for this tutorial. I know it's been a long tutorial, but I tried to explain the basics as I could. And in the next tutorials, we may dive a little bit deeper into the other types and how to handle them. And that's it guys for this tutorial, so catch you in the next one.